We appreciate you taking the time to join us. We know this is an incredibly busy time on campus. Just so everyone is aware, this is being recorded and will be made available. Staff may not be on video 100% of the time, and that is our hope to avoid any disruptions with the recording. There is a chat feature available in Zoom. I'm sure we all know that by now. During the presentation, if you have any questions, comments, please put in that chat. We do have a staff member monitoring that chat. She may pop in and stop us at any time to answer those questions. We also plan on making those questions and answers available in a document that will also accompany this presentation. So are there any questions before we get started with this? If not, we will go ahead and get started. Board staff will briefly introduce themselves, I'm sorry. The back will then do a roll call of colleges alphabetically. So please respond with the names of all those in attendance from your college. We will then go into the background about the data collection, allowable and unallowable fees, TEA and board actions, the collection process, and then the collection approval, the timeline that we all have to meet. So as I stated, my name is April Henry. I'm the Director of Workforce Development here with the Board of Regents and one of the staff members who will be approving the fee.
I can start. My name is Lisa Beck, and I'm Associate Director of Workforce Development, working with April on these projects.
I'm Erin Guardiola, Project Coordinator here at KBOR, also helping with the Excel and CTE fee project.
And I'm Charmin Chambers, Associate Director for Workforce Development, also helping with the project.
So if we think about the background, what is this collection and why are we doing it? And the simple answer.
Hey, April, can I stop you for a second? Do we want to go through the roll call of institutions now?
Absolutely, we do.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Sorry to interrupt. All right, I'm going to go through each of the institutions, and if you would let me know who's here. Oh dear, I have it echoing. All right, Allen County Community College.
Deanna Carpenter.
Okay.
Doug Dunlap.
Okay. Okay. Anyone else? All right. Barton County.
Lisa, I'm so sorry. This is Charmin Chambers. Folks, if you're not responding, please go ahead and mute your line. I'm seeing a few folks that have muted their video but haven't muted their phone, and we're getting some feedback.
Yeah, we're getting some echo going on, and I think it might be from that. So everyone could mute their microphones, please.
I'll accept Casey, because Casey, I think I cut you off. I'm sorry.
I'm Casey Crutcher with Barton.
Okay. Casey.
Ray Willis with Barton.
Okay.
Jeff Mills with Barton.
Okay.
Sarah Regal with Barton.
Okay.
Denise Schreiber with Barton.
Who was that last person name?
Denise Schreiber with Barton.
Okay. Okay. And is Mark Dean on? I had him accepted.
He's actually in another meeting right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm here with Barton.
Oh, there he is.
Okay.
Hi, this is Mark Dean. I'm with Barton.
Oh, great. Gotcha. All right, Butler.
Isam Mohammed, I'm here.
Okay. Heather, are you on? No? Okay. If I miss anybody, just put it in the chat and I will catch up with everybody later. Cloud Community College. Amber or Mary? From Cloud? Not yet. Coffeeville, Chuck?
Chuck Reed Coffeyville is here.
Great, thank you. Colby,
Hi, Brett Hankin is here.
gotcha. Cowley,
Janice Stover and Chris Cannon.
okay,
Debbie Phelps and Holly Harper.
all right. Anyone else? Michelle?
She's on another call too, I think, with
Okay.
Scott Smathers.
Oh, well, that's Scott. What's he doing taking him away from my meeting? And Janice, did I have you?
Yes.
Janice, you're here? Okay. Okay. Dodge.
Yeah.
Mike Webster, Dodge City.
Okay.
Christy Oschwager and Amanda Hagel, Dodge City.
Okay. And
Charlene Figger, Dodge City.
okay, gotcha. Flint Hills.
Lisa Kermer, Flint Hills Tech College.
Okay.
Nancy Thompson, Flint Hills Technical College.
Okay. Brenda, are you on?
Yeah, Brenda Barrett, Garden City Community College.
Whoops, no, I was talking about Brenda Carmichael from
Oh,
Flint.
sorry.
I don't think Brenda's getting on.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Fort Scott. Jacob or Julie?
Jacob Reichard, Fort Scott Community College.
Gotcha. Julie? No? Okay. Garden City.
Brenda Barrett.
Gotcha. Is Chuck on?
Chuck Pfeiffer and Julie Farr with Garden City Community College also.
Okay. Highland?
Jeff Hearn from Highland.
Okay. And is Lucas going to be on?
I really don't know. I haven't talked to him today.
Okay. Hutchison?
Julie Blanton from Hutch.
Okay.
Steve Porter from Hutch.
All right.
Cheever from Hutch.
Yeah. Rex Cheever, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. To miss the last name? Was that Anita?
Anita Bile from Hutch.
Gotcha. All right. And Independence?
Anita Chappé, Independence.
Gotcha.
JC Independence.
JC, okay. Got you both.
Natalie Ullman Byers, Johnson County Community College.
Okay, thank you. Kansas City, Kansas?
Yes, Christopher Day is here, Chris Day.
Okay.
And Jen Weaver on behalf of Tiffany Bohm.
Okay.
Carol Rennebaum.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Welcome.
And Mahir's here too.
Let's see. Jennifer, and who else did I hear? Cheryl? Was that right?
Yeah, Cheryl Rennebaum,
Okay.
Dean of CTE.
And then Mahir Chand at Kansas City, Kansas Community College.
Okay, gotcha.
Thank you.
Mike or Jerry? Mike Beach or Jerry Pope? Either one?
Jerry could not make it. He's in a meeting.
Okay. Is that with Scott also? Okay. Labette?
Leanna Doherty.
Okay. Tracy?
Tracy will be here in a minute.
Okay. Manhattan?
Carmela Jacobs, Kimberly Withroder, Lauren Rust, and Morgan Steckline for Manhattan Tech.
Okay. Carmela Jacobs, Kim Withroder, Lauren Rust, you said?
Yes, Lauren Rust and Morgan Steckline.
Gotcha. Thank you. Neosho?
Luann Hauser.
Okay,
Sarah Robb.
great. North Central?
Andy Zimmer and Debbie Geyer.
All right, thank you. Northwest?
Kent Adams.
Okay. Is Sherry, is it 19? on from Northwest? No? All right, Pratt, I got you. Kent, you're Pratt, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Monette Depew, Pratt.
Okay.
Kathy Blasey Pratt.
All right.
Lisa Collin Pratt.
Great. Salina. No one from Salina? Seward.
Jamie Polinsky from Salina Tech.
Oh, there you are. Thank you.
Sorry.
I'm back to Seward. Seward?
Teresa Waymire, flying solo from Seward.
Okay, thank you. Wichita Institute Tech?
This is Kristen Johnston from WSU Tech, and Sayofi Yosef is on as well.
Okay. And WSU Tech.
Sorry, did I not? Maybe I responded to the wrong school. This is
Oh,
Kristen.
sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Washburn. I'm sorry. Washburn Institute of Tech.
This is Justin Vilmer from Washburn Tech.
Okay.
This is Marie Hall from Washburn Tech.
Thank you.
Jennifer Ewing, Washburn Tech.
Thank you. Louise? No, I think she can't come. And then, sorry, WSU Tech. I had Kristen Johnson and who else?
Yosef.
And who else?
Sayofi Yosef.
Okay, got it. All right. And Heather Morgan, I think you're on the line. Okay. That, April, I think I have got everyone. If anybody else jumps on that you know of from your institution and we didn't get you, just put it in the chat and we will pick it up then. Thanks very much.
Thank you. And Lisa, sorry, I said we were going to do that, and then I just walked right all over that. But we will reach out to those institutions who don't have representation on the line to see if they want further instruction from us. I'm sure they will. But if we go back and background to what is this data collection? The very simple answer that I can give is the state statute says that the board shall do these things. So what shall they do? They shall set guidelines for tuition and fees schedule for the CTE courses and programs. The submission of the fees shall be annually approved. The board shall maintain fees on file, and those fees shall be open for public inspection. So when we see the word shall in statutory language, that's a must. We must do these things. So that really is the background of this particular collection. At the beginning of the academic year 19 year, the TEA requested that a subcommittee be established of board staff, community college representation, and technical college representation. So a subcommittee was put together, and in December of 2019, that subcommittee met and developed the allowable and unallowable fees. That committee consisted of the representatives of the community college sector and technical college sector for that year. So the community college representative was President Traska from Seward County Community College. The technical college representative was President Jeanette from Manhattan Area Technical College. Heather Morgan from the Kansas Association of Community Colleges was also there. Steve Kearney with the Kansas Technical Colleges was invited, and Vice President Smathers and myself were in a room on December of 2019. I can't remember the exact date. So what did we come to agreement on? Allowable fees. In short, you could think of these things as items required for entrance into the program, required for the program itself, or items that the students take with them when they leave the college. So for a lot of your healthcare, you might have a background check or drug testing. Those are allowable fees because it is required for entrance into those types of programs. Uniforms, the student takes that with them, completely acceptable to charge. certification, liability insurance, graduation and transcript fees if in the event the student either graduates or wants to send their transcript elsewhere. Those are allowable fees. Unallowable fees would be items that the student, they're not leaving the college with, so they shouldn't be charged for them. So your general fees, a technology fee, consumables, another good one, late fees for books, those types of things. If it's not something that the student is generally taking with them, they shouldn't be charged for those items. So what's happened since then? Everyone can remember the spreadsheets from last year. They were loosely developed by Kansas City, Kansas Community College and used to manually collect all the fees for courses and programs at your college. Every program at every college submitted those either through Heather Morgan or to KBOR themselves. They were reviewed line by line by the TEA in February. The fees were either approved or disapproved based on those guidelines that we previously looked at. The fees that were approved were then moved forward to the Kansas Board of Regents for their final approval. And in this PowerPoint itself, when we send this out, you will have links to those packets where that information was provided in the meetings, what was approved for your institution. If you have questions about the fees approved by your institution, Erin, who introduced herself earlier, is kind of the keeper of those fees right now. So going forward, moving forward past that, workforce development staff worked with the data research and planning staff to develop an automated process that's housed within KEDS. So instead of using those spreadsheets, we can use what we already have to get this information. The Excel and CTE fees that were already approved for AY21 for the current year that we're in, what DRP has done is they've went in and backfilled into the KEDS database. So what does that mean? If on your spreadsheets it was clear, so English Comp, bad example because it's a non-technical course, but English Comp had a fee of X for an allowable fee, we went ahead and attached that to that course. So when you go into the database, you'll be able to see some of those courses are already populated for you. So what you will need to do is go in and, is this still the fee that we want to charge students for this course in this program? Now, some cases where we weren't able to do that were if your line item had multiple fees on it. So an example would be there'd be a course or a program that came in and all in one fee was an insurance, certification, and uniform, and there was one lump sum. There was no way for us to guess how much belonged in each one of those categories, and for that, we did not backfill that type of information. So Sherman, I think we're ready for you. The only other things that I would add here is using the AY21 Excel and CTE fee report that we have for you, and Sharman will go over that. We already have a report from you. You would be able to look at that and determine what needs to change, what's not. A couple of things to keep in mind is for an Excel and CTE, for a course to receive that funding, it must be two things. It has to be deemed tiered by state law, and it has to be associated to an appropriate technical program. So for this question, you only need to address the courses that are tiered. So if the bad example I gave earlier, English Comp shows up in the program, we don't need to collect any fees for that. You're not charging any fees under Excel and CTE to that student. If there is obviously tuition, students are responsible for those non-tiered courses. Any new programs that you might have had since the approval in February most likely have not been preloaded. So you will have to manually enter those fees for both the courses and programs. And that's pretty much, do we have any questions so far?
We do have a question in the chat, April.
Okay, what was the question?
Chris Day asked, what about a math book fee like from Pearson? The student pays for this.
It's a what fee? A MacBook?
A math, like mathematics.
Oh, yeah, textbooks and the fees that go along with the textbooks to log in to maybe an online site are acceptable.
And I would just add too, as we kind of move forward here with the presentation, what you're really going to be focusing on is verifying what was already submitted to see if it still matches up with what you need to submit for academic year 2022. And in that vein, if it's something that you had already submitted, then it's already in here likely. So that'll help. That'll help with some of these questions about, yep, and that was just an example, but that's exactly, you know, if it's there, it'll already show up for you. It was part of the work that we did, that DRP specifically did up front to try to make this process as manageable as possible. So we're going to take a look. We've done some screenshots so that this PowerPoint can also be a resource for you later on, along with the FAQs. So when you log into the data system, and I've been looking through the list of participants, for some of you this is going to be very, very easy to visualize and see. Some of you are more on the finance side, so you may not have seen this, but both of you will have to work so closely together that we wanted to get you all together here. So for those of you who are in institutional research or data entry or what have you, what you will do is you'll make your profile academic year 2021. And when you go to the program tab, the very first thing that you're going to see on the program tab is where you will access the links to do the Excel and CTE fee collection. So you have program fees, you have course fees, and you also have the Excel and CTE fee report that rolls those things up for you. So before we jump into the actual two fee links, just talking real briefly about the Excel and CTE fee report itself. If you want to hit the next slide, April. This is something that you're going to want to, we made this downloadable to Excel like we always do. You can sort this by program and by course. And this right now, this is the AY21 submitted fees for your institution. So in essence, this should match what was approved in the links over to the TEA meeting notes for your institution. So this is yet another double check for you to be able to see how those things are changing and to verify with your finance folks. So it's a good idea, obviously, to always download and keep a copy of this first before you make any modifications. If you happen to be one of the institutional research folks at your institution and you don't have some finance folks on this call with you, you're going to have to get with the finance folks because you're going to need to work together to make sure that those fees are either correct for 2022 or that you change them for 2022. And then again, you're going to be able to pull it again, just like all of these reports that DRP has created for us with all of our collections so that we can go back and verify and make sure that things get changed the way that they need to. So that's a quick note about that. And we didn't want to spend a ton of time on that. That's a typical Excel document like what you're used to looking at. But if you go into the program fee link, what you will see is up at the top, and again, we made the screenshot so that you've got some references here. You'll know that you're in the right place when you see Excel in CTE fee collection AY22. This is the program fee link. Just so you know, the open period is going to be October 1st. So disregard my 9/24 there, please. But this screen is going to be particularly useful to you. This is just an example institution, but your programs are listed, obviously, just like you're used to seeing them in program inventory. If you click on that status column, I think you have to click it twice technically, it'll bring all of your pending programs up to the top. Pending pink, that's always nice. And those have a modify button, which signals to you that there are already fees submitted for AY21. Those fees all must be verified or changed one way or another. So we're making everyone go through that process of absolutely verifying what we have already put in for 21. Is it or isn't it right for 22? And then you'll see there at the bottom, I made a little note. If your institution didn't submit fees at the program level, then what you'll see is the add fee link, where you would add any of those fees as needed. So now, when you click into one of those programs, you'll see there up at the top, you can tell you're always going to be looking at the very top left-hand side to see if your application has or has not been submitted yet to KBOR. This gives you the breakdown of your program information. And at the program level, this does a couple of things. At the bottom, if you had program level fees for academic year 21 that were approved, they've been loaded there. If no changes are necessary, you would just hit save and submit, the KBOR buttons that'll be up at the top left corner. And forgive me, my descriptions aren't terribly exact. We don't want you to belabor your feed descriptions, obviously, but for any of you that have come into a position and taken over some of these things, you know that a little bit more information rather than a little bit less is always helpful to everyone to be able to figure out exactly what we're talking about. The other key area that I would point out here is that from the programs, much like you do in the everyday KEDS data system, you can access the courses within the program. So we thought that this would be a little easier to kind of get this whole process started, because if you just started looking at all of your courses, it might seem a little bit daunting. But if you think about it from a program perspective, you're not very likely to have courses with fees that aren't in a program, and that program is something that you'll want to start with. So much like what you're used to seeing, you'll see the breakdown here of the courses within the program. As Director Henry mentioned, you'll see there's a cosmetology board review course. It is non-tiered. That's the N in the tier or non-tier column on the left side of the course title, and therefore we're not looking for a course fee there. And again, down at the very bottom, it still will show any of the program fees. This is just one example. Some institutions had 1 or 2 program fees. Some had an entire list. It varies from institution to institution. So if we hit the next slide, one thing that we do want to emphasize before we move into what the courses look like and so forth, your programs that are going to have the same fees for 22 that you had in 21, they still must be verified. For a lot of folks, that might seem like a lot of clicks and so forth, but we want to be absolutely sure that we're starting with perfect data for 22 and not getting ahead of ourselves of thinking, oh, well, you know, nothing's changed. We need to have eyes on everything. The good news is that if you don't have fees for 21, and still don't for 22, it's not necessary to save or submit any data there. Those will stay grayed out. You'll still have the link that says add fee, and you could do that for the following year. And I apologize, I'm going to mute for just a second. I'm so sorry about that. I'm sitting right next to my grandfather clock, and it goes off every 15 minutes to remind me that it's there. So when you look at the course link, again, up in the top left corner, this particular application hasn't been submitted yet to KBOR. That's something that you're going to want to look for on all of these courses and programs. But this is a course itself. And you see there that fees were entered. This is, again, just an example. The fee type, that list of drop downs is something that our friends at DRP spent a lot of time creating based on everything that you all submitted in the spring to try to standardize that as much as possible. In the fee description, we'll probably be looking for something a little bit more specific than that. But again, if you have course level fees that were submitted and approved in AY21, then this will be populated. But there will be other courses that you might go into. If no course fees were approved, then they won't be populated there. And if there aren't any new ones to add, you need not worry about that, obviously.
And Charmin, I was going to add to it here. So in the case of this particular course, if we're looking at Intro to Business, and we have a book that is also used by, let's say, Intro to Leadership, just listing book in the fee description does not help our system be able to decipher if that's the same book being used. If you give it more detail, say the book title, what our system can do is then dedupe it so that the overall cost for your program isn't inflated by duplicated cost. But that really is determined on how detailed you are when you put information into this fee description area.
Awesome, thank you. Actually, this is an example that I created, and I think the next slide is where I circled. If you all will indulge me, that's obviously not a correct format for an ISBN, but you know, something like that. Not only, or at least the text title, lets us know exactly what textbook we're talking about. And it also is, especially, this is extremely important, especially when you're trying to go back year over year to look at these costs and verify that things are correct. So up at the top left, you'll see here that this fee application has been submitted to KBOR. So I just made a note there. This is what a course is going to look like when fees have been submitted for it for 22. So you had some fees in 21 and you went in and you said, oh, okay, well, our fees this time are $35. You saved it. You hit the submit to KBOR button, and now your course will look like this. And there over on the right, you'll see the approval process. It's going through 3 points of review. We are taking a look at it as workforce staff so that we can try to answer any questions or get any necessary clarifications from you before we go to the TEA, because we know that they're going to ask those questions. And we did have one quick question here. Instead of just listing textbook, we should have a title. Yes, please. That at least would be great. And while we're here, fees will be tied to a course because you'll either enter, well, I take that back. Janice, fees will either be at a course or a program level. You'll have either one. And Heather, you had a question here that these are the maximum fees. That's right. even if the book is preloaded and the price needs to be updated, it may be possible that your institution may choose to charge a lesser or a smaller fee than what you list here, but it's important here to list the maximum fees that you would be charging, because this will all roll up again, as we mentioned in the first slide with the statute. This is publicly available information. So this, one of the things that we hear from a variety of groups, stakeholder groups, especially at the legislative level, is that they really want our students and our parents especially to be able to go in and get information about costs and so forth. We have degree stats. We have a lot of information already, but this is specifically about the Excel and CTE fees. And so we want folks to be, you know, sort of armed with all the information that they need to be able to get started here. And I'm going to turn away from questions here just for a second. We'll jump through the rest of the slides, and then we can come back to whatever questions aren't addressed. So looking at course fees a little bit more, April, if you could hit the next slide. So as I mentioned, we're going to be pre-reviewing these submitted fees, clarifying with you, asking lots of questions, just so you know. Now, this is what it looks like when you go into your course fee link. You'll see your list of courses there at the bottom. And this is a great example because you've got a variety of courses at a variety of levels. So the very bottom course, CompTIA A+ Practical Applications, it's grayed out and it has an add fee link. That means that there were no fees previously submitted and approved for that course. If you need to add them, you can add them, but those aren't the ones that you'd be necessarily focusing on first, obviously. You'd be focusing on those that have the pending status. Again, when you click on the status, the word status, that sorts that column for you, and it'll bring all of those courses up to the very top so that you can take a look at them. Now, here's something to note as well, because you're going to get to a point, not for a while, but you'll get to a point where you want to make sure that you've addressed everything. So you'll start seeing your courses that have been submitted in white and lavender so that they are staggered so that you can see the difference between two courses line by line. But much like we do with courses and programs now, it might be necessary for us to reverse one to you, to ask you some additional questions there. And what that will do then is that will give us a great big red reversed in the submitted column. You're going to want to look for those because we'll need to address those prior to taking everything to the TEA and so forth. We want to make sure that all of these are addressed. Next slide. I think that's what I wanted to say about that. This is going to sound redundant, but courses that have the same fees for 22 as what you submitted in 21 still have to be verified, just like programs. Courses that have no fees in 22, we don't need. If you had courses with no fees at the course level for 21 and that's still the same for 22, you don't need to submit any data. Once you click into these links, you're going to see just how big that particular review is going to be for your institution. And you can also see that if you haven't already seen it, you can see it in the TEA minutes. that we linked to this PowerPoint. For those of you who are not familiar with going out there, every time the TEA meets, the agenda is published and the minutes are published. It's out on the kansasregents.org website under workforce development under TEA. So it's the geography of that, if you will, is very similar to what you see for the board meetings. So you can go through that navigation and you can see all of the TEA meeting notes, what's been presented, and then what was approved. Next slide, please. Okay, so just as a reminder, always keep circling back then to the Excel and CTE fees report, because that is going to create, that link is going to create for you a 22 report. So you'll have that Excel document if you need to take with you to speak with folks in finance or to speak with your president or what have you, making sure that the fees that are submitted are correct. Again, all those 21 fees were loaded for your review. So it's new fees for 22 that would need to be added, and verifying the 21 fees. Also, this is about technical programs. So programs that are not going to be technical anymore do not need to be verified. And if you're not sure if you have any of those, we can talk about those offline. Those are a little different. Also, this is also about, specifically about tiered courses and about active technical programs. So if you have a broken program, that broken program is going to have to be fixed. If you're not used to dealing with that, again, we can talk about those offline. But you're going to want to make sure that all of those are addressed as well. Next slide, please. So the overall timeline, this is the big kicker that everybody's been waiting for. This is going to open on October 1st, and we need to close it on October 30th. And we know how very busy everyone is. Obviously, there's really no downtime at your institutions, but we spoke specifically and went to the community and technical college presidents and wanted to make sure that whatever we were doing with this process would meet their needs. And one of the things that they were very concerned about was their ability then to be enrolling students in March for the following year. And so essentially what we did is we worked backward from that to make that possible, to ensure that we could meet that deadline for your institution so that you can start that process for the following year. So we would collect the data in October. We as KBOR staff will be taking a look at it and clarifying and verifying anything we need to with you. We want to make sure that it's ready for the TEA no later than December 10th. And then it would go to the January meeting for KBOR. And at that point, once they approve it, it would be ready for publication. This way, like I said, we can make sure that we meet the needs for your institutions to begin enrolling for the following academic year. Next slide, please. This, as Director Henry mentioned at the very beginning, this is a statute. This is a shall do. This is a must. So this is going to be standard operating procedure. We had some folks already ask if this was going to be added to the project calendar, and it will, because we'll need to do this every year. We'll need to be absolutely sure that we've got that corrected each year. New programs. You already, for those of you who have submitted new programs, you had to also submit any fees that you anticipated charging for Excel and CTE students, and those will also need to be added into the data system, and we will work on that as it comes up. We also had questions about whether or not this collection could be opened earlier going forward. That would certainly be a possibility. One thing that we've got to remember too is that up until very, very recently, we were also working on the academic year data. So that's obviously something that happens at the same time as well. Those may be things that we can look at going forward. I can't remember, do we have another slide? No. Okay. And I'm not sure exactly how far we got on the questions that were in the chat. Janice, I think we answered your question. Fees are tied to a course or at a program level. There's the fee type, that's the generic drop-down list, and the fee description is where you would put the title of a textbook or an ISBN or something like that. Textbook isn't going to be specific enough. And Janice, the books used for multiple classes, it's best to list it at the course level. And then we would be able to duplicate the costs there. And Lisa mentioned to make sure that the fee description is exactly the same on your for instance, on your textbooks or what have you, so the system will recognize that. Did we answer?
Carmen, we have a question from Natalie.
That's where I was just getting to. I wasn't sure if we answered it yet or not.
We have it, but well, Heather kind of answered it. Yes, you always want to put the maximum fee that would be charged. So her question really is, if there is say a book fee for a program, but a lot of the high schools they work with will either have that textbook available to the student for free or something like that, then it really isn't the cost for that particular student. But we're thinking bigger. So think of it as a broader collection. So yes, list every possible cost. But then, if ever we get to the point where we publish this for the public, depending on the college relationship with the USDs, the cost may be less to those particular students. So we would ask you, Natalie, to list the max cost, but there will be obviously a caveat that if the high school works with the college and there's some kind of agreement, that student might pay less for that particular program.
North Central, what user types can submit these fee reports for review? You would need to be somebody who would have access to the KEDS data system, that would have writing access to that. So if you're not one of those folks, you would want to work with your IR folks on that as well. Also, Marty mentioned that we need to discuss the student expense flag in the program screen. And April, I'm sorry, I don't remember if we've actually got a picture of that on the program screen. What we had, yeah, that'll work. So when all of these fees were submitted in the spring, we had scenarios where what was submitted was, this student needs to show up and have a good pair of boots in a welding program. Now, they can buy one from the institution for XYZ fee, or they can provide it themselves. But either way, the student has to have that equipment. And that's where this student expense flag came from on the far right side, whether it's next to the required optional, and is it a student expense, yes or no? April, correct me if I'm wrong. At this point, I think for the most part, we want to just say that student expense is no. even though all of these things obviously are student expenses. And we would leave that to change over to a yes for a fee that you would describe as a fee where the student could provide their own tools or materials or what have you.
You are correct with that. So that student expense, typically we would see it, you would leave it as no if the institution is charging a fee. If you change that to yes, that means the student needs to come in with it. The school isn't charging them a fee for it. Let's talk about the column right next to that, required or optional. What we're probably looking for most to show up there is required. When you would have an optional fee, think about Skills USA. That is an optional fee for students. Not all students have to pay that fee. It's optional if they want to. So that's really, I think, the only time we would see that one come into play. But those two, if you ever have questions on those, please get a hold of one of us so we can walk through that with you and make sure you're marking it correctly.
Katie clarified that you need to have right access to KEDS. I'm a little confused about the questions about the USD charges and then the college charges and so forth. Just so everybody knows, USDs are not entering any data in here. So this would be something that the college would be saying, this is a fee to the student. Now, what your relationship would be with the USD of who charges and who collects and who then pays, and how that money changes hands would not be something that we would really want to get into. It would be a situation where this is to provide students with information about the fees for the program at the college. Hopefully that clarifies that a little bit. So if you're not charging a fee to cover the textbook, but the student purchases these items on their own, no data input would be necessary. Well, does the student have to have the textbook or the equipment to be in the program? In that case, what I would say is, even though you're not charging the fee necessarily, it would kind of fall into that example that we discussed about like boots for a welding program. The student needs to have the appropriate attire. There's a scenario in a lot of institutions where they say, you know what, if you need to buy it from us, we've got a way for you to do it. If you don't, and you have it yourself, that's great too, but it is a cost that the student is going to need to be aware of. So Mark, in your case, I would say that that would need to be in here. It might be something that we need to discuss offline because it seems like, I mean, if a student's going to have to pay it one way or another, then that's kind of really what we're getting at. You just might have a little odd situation.
Are there any other questions anyone can think of? And if there's not, don't worry. I know there'll be questions later. We are willing to do individual training and walkthroughs with your particular institution. So if you want to get with Sharma and I, Lisa or Aaron individually, we can set up a time to work with you on your data. This will be the first time you guys see this. So of course, all the questions might not come to mind right now. So NCK Tech has a question. If it is required for the student to bring themselves, we don't know the price, what should we put in there for the fee amount? I'm guessing that might be an example of a boot. So say they have to have steel-toed boots. You would, under the fee type, put uniform in the fee description, what type of boot, so the student would know. And then I would guess on a price. So $60 or so, and that's required. The student expense would be yes. So what that would show up on a report to the public is the student needs to come prepared with steel-toed boots. Here's kind of the description of the boot that they would need. This is a rough estimate, but it is not a fee that the institution is charging the student. I think Heather had a question about that, the iPads. So Northwest Tech had iPads. That is another example similar to what Natalie had said, that yes, for a student coming in, they might have to purchase the $600 iPad. However, if they're working with one of their local high schools, that iPad is provided for them. So in that particular case, you're putting the most expensive cost available, but depending on the high school that the student goes to, that might not their costs might be much lower.
In a sense, you might think of this as, here's the list of fees that you would be charged that are specific to doing CTE. And this is sort of a worst case scenario. So this would be the most that you would be charged. So yes, Janice, you would only mark yes on student expense if the student is purchasing on their own and it isn't part of your billing to the student. And ESOM, the AY21 data for these fees is already in there, and we're opening this up for you to verify and provide AY22 data that will need to be approved in advance for next year. And of course, and Marty's mentioning too, watching out for your new programs. You're going to want to look, some of you are in the process right now of submitting programs, as well as having done a few over the summer as well. So you want to be sure that you're looking for those in addition, to make sure. We know that this can be kind of confusing because we're trying to, so often our reporting is not trying to project this far in the future, obviously. So you're trying to put in the fees that you're going to be dealing with for the following academic year in 22. And Nathan mentioned too, and we have that in the PowerPoint, your programs need to be active. So if they're broken, you need to fix the broken program. And for those of you who are used to dealing with kids, you've already dealt with that. We need to make sure that the program is whole first before all of this will roll over and show up. And we're not talking about non-tiered courses. This is just for tiered courses. And like April said, we know that there will be more questions. We are all working from home. That's why I didn't bother to put phone numbers on. Frankly, for me, it's easier to do a quick email and then try to set up a time to Zoom or Teams or talk on the phone or what have you. And everybody's different and they might not feel that way, but you guys will find us, we know, because you're going to have questions. Yes, we will do, we'll make sure that everybody can get a copy of the presentation. We're also going to do an FAQ, and we'll have a recording of this webinar. We haven't discussed it a whole lot, but we're thinking that we'll probably need a spot on our website along with the Excel and CTE area under workforce development, where we've got this additional information about fees. Also, since this is essentially a data collection, those of you who are used to dealing with the KEDS data manual will probably plan to see information there as well. If an item we're purchasing on behalf of the student greatly increases in price, is there a way to have the fee changed after the submission? I would say, Justin, based on what you're telling me in the question, I would say no. Once and this is where it's going to be tricky in a sense. Once your fees are approved by TEA and KBOR for the following year, I would not, if it were me, I would not recommend trying to adjust fees for that year after that. Yeah, I mean, once they're approved, that's what the expectation would be. And as Heather is mentioning too, that's why you want to make sure that you put in the max, that you have knowledge of at the time. We know that certainly that things change, but like I said, this is the TEA and the Board of Regents approving fees for the following year, much like they do for tuition and so forth.
And Chairman, I would just add, if Justin, there was a case where that does happen, definitely bring it forward, but our hope is that surprises like that don't happen. And if they do, we're trying to, I know it's a quick turnaround, but we're trying to always plan for the future here. So if something does happen, do bring it to our attention. We would need to take it to the TEA. It might be questioned, and you might have to support the rationale for the changing mid-year, but we have to have some flex on that a little bit. And Mark asked, KBOR is only approving the fees reported, not the items that students purchase on their own. No, if the student has to purchase it on their own, they have to purchase it on their own. It's really, what is the institution charging the student?
And maybe don't think of it quite so much as KBOR is approving what the fee is. KBOR is approving the fact that these fees exist for Excel and CTE high school students. And they've been approved, they've gone through the process so that parents and students have a baseline expectation, well, baseline or a max expectation, if you will, of what it's going to cost them to be able to take these courses and programs. If a technical program has non-tiered courses, no, you wouldn't. We're not looking for non-tiered course fees of any kind. Nancy, you were asking about personal protective equipment. What we would say about that really is personal protective equipment that the student leaves with would be something that would be appropriate to potentially to charge to a student. Now, since you and I have talked about this before, also, this is where we also get into extraordinary costs, where previously I would say that the majority of the personal protective equipment probably would have fallen into more of an extraordinary cost for your program and your institution, and we would have been calculating it that way, because you wouldn't have necessarily been looking at some of that equipment to leave with the student. We also think and we don't know. You guys are the ones who are living it and know. We think that you're going to see some changes with your expenses, especially on personal protective equipment now that we're dealing so much with COVID, and things that might have been possible to sanitize repeatedly and use, within a course or what have you. Now it's necessary for a student to have their own, fill in the blank with whatever that piece of equipment is. So we're in that vein, we're all learning that together, if you will.
And Charmin, I would add to that. So if it's gloves for a welding program and the student lives with it, it makes sense to charge a fee. It's equipment or uniform. Same with masks. Now, if it's gloves for a nurse aid program, that's really part of the program cost and should be accounted for within your extraordinary cost. But as Charmin said, I don't know how you guys are working with PPE for all students who are coming in just due to the pandemic. Are you requiring everybody to wear a mask? If so, you're probably not charging them to buy a mask to wear to class. Now, if it's sold in your bookstore and it's just like a sweatshirt, that's on the student. If the student wants to purchase those things, they can, but that's, I would say, not really part of the program at that point. That's flair in a shop. And if there are no further questions, we will go ahead and end this training, but please feel free, reach out to us, request help if you're wanting us to look at it with you. We're more than willing to do that. We can set up a time that works for you, and all of us jump on a call and get together and figure out at your institution how to go about this. If there are no more questions, thank you guys for your time today, and hopefully we'll be in touch soon.